George, welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 2. And I think we'll start off with a little bit of an introduction just as to what the purpose and what the goal of this show is. And I'd love for you, as the co-host of Conversations and Higher Vibrations, to give kind of your perspective on it too as well. I'll start off with me for those who may not know me or listening to this. My name is Adam Goen. I go by Goen all in on X and Rumble and YouTube. Goen is my last name, so I thought that it was a campy little way to call the name Going All In, and so I was anonymous for a while. But it's pretty much says half my name, so we're already there.
Yeah.
But Conversations and Higher Vibrations. So throughout the entirety of this show, we want to do and talk about and help towards anything that raises collective vibrations. And I know that sounds very general, but what I mean by that, and I'd love to hear, George, what you think, is that I know that there are things that are stressful day to day and things that are happening in the world, either geopolitically or otherwise. And this isn't to dismiss the travesties that are happening. It's actually to help and try and give an outlet, if you will, or hold a space to be able to talk about things about higher vibrations. It'll be a myriad of topics. Some we'll hear about today, some you will hear in other episodes too. But that's the main goal of it, all to try and help each other have love and compassion and spread light where we can and talk about those type of things. So that's kind of my interpretation. And again, Adam Goen, based out of North Carolina in the United States. Okay. George, go ahead. What's your perspective on this show?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with a little intro about myself. So my name is George Monroy. I live in Texas in the San Antonio area. My background is in IT. So I had an IT business for several years, sold it, and now I'm just been enjoying life for the past year, really working on higher vibrations, trying to help people. The way I see this show is just, I think you nailed it 100%. We want to help people kind of set aside the day-to-day for a minute and think about how can they improve their lives with very practical things, and then also some spiritual things if they are, happen to go that way. One thing I've discovered is that there are many ways to get to source, creator, to a higher vibration, whatever you want to call it. I've seen that there are many different ways, and all paths can lead there. So yeah, I think that's what I would say is the point of this show, is to help people, I guess, get a break. Sometimes people go watch movies to get a break from reality. And right. This is just a way to, have conversations about things that people wonder about, kind of demystify what, this world is and how we can get to a higher vibration.
Perfect. Thank you, George. There's two things that come up with that I'd like to mention to you. So one, and you being the co-host, and I feel like the driver, for this in a lot of ways, where I tend to be a little wordy, and I'll say that fairly often. You've got a great, quiet approach to you, which helps you be a really good, I'm going to say, intuitive observer, and you lean in when it makes sense for you. One thing that I think you've brought up, which is great, because we do this on the X Spaces that we hold right now weekly, which we'll probably do more than weekly, but we'll definitely continue doing that one. You mentioned about submitting topics or just reaching out to us in whatever avenue that is, whether it's X on comments or DMs, whatever everyone feels comfortable with. Can you tell me a bit more about that, or maybe the audience?
Yeah, so what I see this space, these conversations to be about are what people are interested in. And oftentimes things that they're interested in, they may not know a lot about it. They may want to learn more. And I feel that it's best that people do reach out to us and tell us, hey, I'd like to learn more about this. Do y'all know anything about it? Or, hey, I heard this, or this is something that I've really been thinking about for a while. And if they send us messages on X, then we can, process those and bring those up as topics, because you and I have read a lot. We've watched a lot of videos. We've had a lot of discussions between us and other people. And we know what interests us and what we may lean towards. But I wanted this to be for the people, so to speak. I want them to benefit. And I don't want to just be people that talk about what we feel everyone should know. I
Yeah.
want to talk about what people need so they can get to those next steps, because this is all continuous growth. It's
Right.
continuous improvement.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, this is much bigger, I think, than you or I.
Yes,
Sure, it's
definitely.
our channel here, co-hosting it,
Mhm.
and that's great. We want to help how we can. You do, I do, in our own ways. I love that we're a little bit different in our approaches, because that helps us both, in my opinion, get better. And this is about the people and what they'd like to hear, and any inspiration that they have, either just listening in and observing or doing something themselves, something
Mhm.
like this or something totally different. I'd love to hear from people of how this might spark something within them as inspiration.
Yes.
Thanks, George. Thank
Yeah,
you.
my pleasure.
I've got a couple questions for you.
I don't know if I should be
So
nervous or excited or all of the above.
whatever you want to be,
Yeah,
whatever you want to be will be.
right.
So
And
I've
so
done
it
a little,
is.
go ahead.
I say, and so it is.
And so it is. And so it is. I've done a little perusing. This is me reflecting on things that I've heard about you, and either from other people looking on X. These are all good things, so
Yeah.
don't be alarmed. And our conversations directly too. And what I really want to try to do, I don't want this to feel like an interview podcast. I want it to feel like a conversation, but I also want to approach this from a lens of, I know you maybe more than other people are hearing this, just like they don't know me. So I'd like to try to approach it that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I am aware of a motto of yours that I think you call the three L's. And I
Yeah.
believe they're let go, live, and love.
That's
Can you
correct.
tell me where that came from and why that's a motto of yours?
Well, I probably should have written it all down as it was developing. They all came from different places, and I don't remember all of it. But let's just start with let go. So, one of the things that I learned a while back, and this is probably from many places, many different videos, many different things I've read, but you can't really grow until you let go of everything that is holding you back, meaning, any hatred you may have towards somebody, maybe not forgiving someone that
Yeah.
did something to you, just general, I'm driving down the road to work and someone cut me off, and then you're just holding on to that. um, I've realized that if you hold on to anything, any of that negativity, it's like a chain. You're like a dog chained to a stake in the ground. You're never going to go anywhere. All those chains are those bits that you're holding on to. So that is really the first step before you can get going anywhere. Is you have to forgive everybody, and it doesn't mean like that person that abused you, or is abusing you now, that you tell
Yeah.
them you forgive them. You don't even have to do that. You have to, in your own mind and heart, realize that, what, they did this, there's something wrong with them. I'm going to have a little bit of compassion for them. I don't know what they went through, and they just haven't let go themselves, but I'm not going to let that affect me anymore, and I'm going to let that go. That comes from, psychiatry. It comes from just general life. And if you let go of things, then you can begin to start to see the world in different ways. Then your heart can start to open up more, and the compassion can start to flow, which I know that's something you talk about often, is heart and compassion. That's a big thing.
I do.
So for me, this is the precursors. You have to let go of all that, all those
Yeah.
things that are holding you back. The next piece, you have to live, and live means you have to be comfortable with who you are. You have to not worry about what people think about you, because that's kind of something people hold on to, is that, you were told you were fat or ugly, or you were told you weren't smart, or you told you can't do this, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Maybe you never start painting because people say, oh, you can't draw, or you're not creative. Like, I, I've found out that everyone is creative in some form or fashion. Everybody.
Right.
Even if you think you aren't, you're creative in some way, and you can do that. So the living piece comes from being able to express yourself, to be who you are. Don't worry about what anybody thinks, or if they think you're crazy, or they think you're goofy, or whatever. This world is so much better with everyone being different instead of everyone being the same anyway.
Yeah.
And that's what we get joy from. So I feel that you have to live your life first. So you let go of the baggage, You start living and enjoying things, doing what you enjoy, even if you go by yourself. Like I remember, I don't know, I was in my 20s and I had a job. I was working at Compaq Computers. If anybody remembers that, HP bought them out. But
I do.
I worked at Compaq, and we used to troubleshoot the motherboards that failed on the assembly line. You know, we had the board sitting in front of me and had to check all the chips out and all of that. But um, what I forgot where I was going with this now. Um, oh yeah, about doing things by yourself. So I had a weird schedule when I started there. I was working Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 12-hour shifts. So I wasn't partying on the weekends.
Right.
So I did a lot of things by myself. I would go to the movies on Wednesdays because nobody was there in the middle of the day. And it was awesome. There were like two other people there, maybe, or I was there by myself. So imagine being able to go to a theater and watch a movie and nobody is around you and you have to hear screaming, talking,
Yeah.
popcorn, phones, nothing. So that's a beautiful thing. But most people are afraid to go see a movie by themselves
Yeah.
or go to a restaurant by themselves. And I've always done this and it was never a problem. Like I enjoyed it. You get to be in your own headspace. And this was like before we really had cell phones running around doing anything, you know?
Yeah.
So that was, people couldn't fathom today to go have a meal by themselves and not have a phone. Um, so you have to be able to enjoy your own presence and you have to live your life because then that leads into the third piece, the love piece. So if you've let go of everything and now you're living your life, your heart is opening up more. You can be compassionate towards others. You can start loving everything, people, animals, nature, all those things that you probably didn't pay attention to before. You start seeing them with different eyes. You start realizing that there's something bigger, that we're all connected to everything.
Yeah.
Everything is connected. So for me, those three steps are really the way to get to the part where you talk about compassion and kindness and heart, I think that all flows together really well. But yeah, where did I get it all from? It's just a culmination of everything that I've read, learned, experienced.
Right. Your journey, your personal
Yeah.
journey. I mean, you talked about forgiveness and let go, and I kept thinking, let go of judgment. It's
Mhm.
more just like you've explained, but you let go of
Yes.
judgment, you live life, you're just being, you're just existing, and loving everything. And I know love has a connotation where you're like, what do you mean I'm going to love everything? It's the way in which I mean it, and I think you mean it too, where it's not attached to a specific output or some reaction or response back to you. You're wanting to love everything. I mean, that's
Unconditionally.
yeah, that's right. That's right. I want to take you in a different direction
Okay.
for this next part. So you have, and I don't know if you still have it pinned to the top of your X account, but you did for a while.
Mhm.
Maybe you still do. You have a perspective, and you mentioned about an IT background. So these words resonate. Then for me, no, hearing that from you, your perspective and concept of this operating system of the universe by George, right?
Mhm.
So can you tell us what that means for you, this operating system of the universe? And before you answer, I wanted to go back to something you did say earlier. You mentioned source, creator, I think, but correct me
Yes.
if I'm wrong. That's what you're referring to as what people may say as God or prime creator, like I call it,
Mhm.
divine creation, source field for
Mhm.
people who are a little more into science. I think that's what you mean about the universe. But is that what you mean? And can you tell us about that concept, operating system of the universe?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. So, for a lot of people to understand, the operating system on any computer or phone or tablet, anything you have, that's the underlying mechanism by which everything works. And every app that you run has to tie into that operating system. Essentially, without an operating system, nothing's going to work. So, this is basically the rules of how everything works. You can view it as physics or biology. It all ties back to an operating system, and all those things are layered on top of it. So, and I don't this. I guess I came up with this last year. Just like I already knew it, but it all. I don't even remember. Like something opened my eyes to it, and it just was clear as day of why my life was the way it was. Um, and I'll begin by saying that my life was easy. I didn't have any traumas. I don't have anything bad that ever happened. I mean, I didn't grow up rich, didn't grow up poor. You know, it's just kind of easy going, middle of the road. You know, um, but I was always around other people that were troubled. I may have been around people that had guns or drugs, even maybe took people in my cars, you know, that had those things. And you always hear about people getting in trouble when they're in those environments. I even left a party one time before a drive-by hit it, you know, and while I was in high school.
Wow.
Everything in my life that I was able to avoid or be around,
Yeah.
it wasn't because like I personally, George, knew this is about to go down. It's just I always happened to avoid everything no matter where I was. I never had anything happen to me. And as I got older, and really in the past year or so, I realized, from reading other people's experiences, from seeing videos on how certain things work, I was able to piece it and put all the pieces together and realize, huh, so because the way I've lived my life, and I know I'm having guidance and I'm connected to the source, God, creator, even though like I wasn't religious, you know, my parents
Yeah.
took us to church a few times. My dad didn't care about it. My mom let it go after a while. I was even a minister at a church for a little while, and I left that. Like it didn't fully resonate with me.
Yeah.
Um, but I've always managed to have a smooth life. And there were times in my life where maybe I didn't know what direction I was going to go in. So, for instance, here's one. When I was in high school, I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. Always wanted to be an Air Force pilot. I go take the tests, I pass them all, but when it came to the physical, I failed it because I had lost 80% of my hearing in my ear when I was a baby. I had meningitis.
Mm.
So that in and of itself, people said I was a miracle baby, that I came out fine, you know, just with some
Right.
hearing loss. Like the doctors were telling my parents, you know, if I survive, I may be retarded. I may be all kinds of things, you know, I
Yeah.
have mental issues, but really I came out of it with just some hearing loss. So that dream was shattered, right? About being an Air Force pilot. And I didn't know what to do. And my dad was like, well, I mean, you should do something. And he had seen commercials for ITT technical, and
Yeah.
that's, you know, I went there and met some cool people, and from there I went to Compaq, and everything in my life just built upon the other thing, and when I look back, it's like, well, everything was always for a reason. Everything was always the right path that I needed to go. Never had money problems, and never was taught how to handle money that well, you know. I got some basics, you know, like, you know, this the meme of the dad, hey, don't leave those lights on in that room you're not in, you know.
Right.
But I didn't have any formal training in anything. And
Yeah.
my life just kind of flowed, and everything just always worked out. And now I've come to realize that the reason it worked out is because I was tapped in somehow to this operating system of how it works. And basically, it's if you're kind, you have a good heart, and you do good to other people, and you kind of have an idea of what you want,
Yeah.
it just comes.
Right.
You're like in tune with the universe, with source, with God, with everything, and you will have everything that you want, or not, maybe not that you want, what the universe knows that you want and need. Because sometimes
Right.
we don't know what we want. We don't know what we want to do. Like many times in my life, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just went, and then now I'm here, and everything was great. Up to this
Yeah.
point, everything has been great, and it keeps getting better and better. So it's just really being tapped in to that. And I tell people that all you have to do is, you know, compassion, love, those three L's, and it, have an idea of what you think is a big idea that you think is impossible. You know,
Right.
like, oh, one day I want to do this, or I want to get away from here, I want to do that. Um, and it just flowed for me. And that's how I know, because my whole life has just been an anomaly to me when I look back at everything.
Yeah. You haven't used the word. I appreciate you sharing all that.
Mm.
You haven't used the word, but that sounds like intuition, that you have been open to what intuitively, whether you knew it consciously or not, you just let it flow, which
Mhm.
I think that originates or comes from your intuition. You know, you're not triple questioning yourself or anything. You're kind of just letting it come to you, and in the ways you've described. Would you
Yeah,
agree
and
with that? Do you
I always thought I was lazy, you know, because I didn't have
think?
I didn't study hard. I skated through high school with
Right.
passing grades. I wasn't interested in any of that. I didn't, go. I went to ITT for a couple of years, but I didn't go to, college for 4 to 8 years or anything. But I always thought I was lazy. But yeah, I think I was just in tune to it in a way, in the background, so to speak,
Right.
like an operating system, right? You shouldn't know it's there
Yep.
if it's working, right? Like you don't need any updates or anything. It's just going, right? There's no problems with your Windows or your
Right.
Mac, whatever. It's working. And if you're in tune to it, if you're intuitive, then it should work. You shouldn't know it's there.
Agreed. Speaking of working,
Mhm.
I am. This is a great segue. So we're hearing it in the background, and actually, now that I'm listening to it, I'd like it to stay in. I was
Okay.
thinking, maybe we'd scrub it out, but your bells and wind chimes are working
Mhm.
for sure because I
Okay.
can hear
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So I think I want to leave it in.
Yeah.
Um, they sound beautiful, and it just sort of adds to this.
Hmm.
Um, can you tell me a little bit about your love for wind chimes and bells in general? And do you include this in a routine of yours? Is it just there as a kind of a background thing that you find enjoyable? Did you have them as a kid? Tell me about that. Tell us about that.
No. Yeah, I didn't have them as a kid. I guess the wind chimes came about from my wife, which she got them from her mom. She grew up with the wind chimes, and it's funny. Her dad never liked them, and her mom passed
Okay.
away several years ago. And now that, like, he didn't even get rid of them; like they stayed there. So that it's funny that he didn't like them when she was around, and then he left them there now that she's gone. And that ties you into someone, right?
Yes, it
Um,
does.
so then my wife was all about the wind chimes, and we've just been buying more wind chimes. And actually, what I have in a vision for me is we have a couple of giant oak trees, and we want to get some 12-foot wind chimes to hang from those. But yeah, they give the property a voice, like it gives it shape and form, and wherever you are, you hear them here, and it's very nice.
Yeah.
I do come outside sometimes, especially when the weather is good, and I'll do yoga on the lawn, and I'm hearing the wind chimes, and I'll do some meditation. It just makes for a nice environment.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm smiling so much. You're probably wondering what in the world is he
Yeah.
smiling so much about? The very next question I wanted to ask you, your words are, I did some work on the property. And
Mhm.
you said the word property. So I'm
Mhm.
like, is this not synchronicity? So let's jump right in.
Sure.
So you mentioned on some X post, I believe it was,
Mhm.
I did some work on the property. I'm removing brush and some trees, things like
Mhm.
that. And you were having some back pain. You
Yeah.
felt like you needed to hunch over.
Mhm.
And your wife kindly had made you some breakfast tacos, which sounds
Mhm.
delicious right
Yeah.
now. And then she mentioned something to you. She asked you something when you were having
Mhm.
that back pain. Do you remember what she asked you?
No, not exactly that, but since you remember, you can tell me.
She said, "Do you want to try the frequency device with this new app that I got for free?"
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she had read about an app called the Z app, and it's
Okay.
that company makes a device that is kind of like the Rife machine, if some people know about it. But basically, it's a box
Hmm.
that it has some electrodes that connect to your body, and it can send frequencies wherever you put them. But we didn't have that, and we just had the free app. But she did have this headset that is, what do you call it? Bone induction. So
Yeah.
it vibrates onto your skull and sends the frequencies in.
Oh yeah.
So
Like those, something
yeah,
like that.
yeah. So I have since bought a pair for myself, but she suggested it. So I downloaded the app, synced her headphones to my phone, and I ran I don't remember if it was the back pain sequence or just the general pain sequence,
Yeah.
and it was supposed to run for like 15 minutes, the sequence, because it goes through different frequencies.
Okay.
And we're eating, and within 4 to 5 minutes my back pain was gone already. And normally
Wow.
on any day that we do this kind of work, and hard labor working on the property, I mean, I'm hurting all day long, all day
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
And this was gone in 5 minutes, and I was blown away, and I was like, okay, maybe there is something to this, frequency and vibrational healing.
Yeah.
aspect. And of course, I've gone all in on this. Like, you know, I've got a crystal here a necklace that I made. I made one for my wife with copper and the quartz crystal.
Yeah.
There's, you know, the wind chimes going. I put a bell, like a dinner bell, out there that I like to hit every now and again. Um, but I was amazed, and I kept trying different things. There was even one day I had bug bites. You know, mosquitoes had bit me, and um, I decided to run. I found there was an insect bite sequence. I ran that, and man, I'll be itching all day. And I ran that, and within a few minutes, it was gone too. It's just unbelievable. Like, you would
Wow.
think it's magic, but knowing what I know, how everything has a resonant frequency,
Yeah.
or cells, bone, every kind of material, rock. I mean, you can ask an aeronautical engineer, right? Because they
Right.
deal with the vibrations of the wings, everything. So they know that vibrations affect everything. So why wouldn't it affect everything else in the world, right? It's simple
That's right.
physics.
Yeah. You and I are having a conversation with someone that's going to join the show in a couple days from now,
Hmm.
talking about frequency, and she can tell you, of course, her experience too. But I love hearing this, especially the idea of, you know, some free app that you kind of just, you know, sort of stumbled into, if you will, and are listening to it, and without you even realizing it, maybe the effort and the intention of you, I'm going to try this, I'm going to be open-hearted, open-minded, and see where it goes. That's awesome.
Yeah. And you know, you don't even need to buy anything. I mean, everyone has a phone. You don't need a headset. Like, I tried it in my car. And
Yeah.
you know, cars have like 8 speakers now or whatever, or at least 4 or 5. So I got in my car and did it with the speaker, all the speakers. So all those speakers are hitting you with all those vibrations on your entire body. So it works in your car too, or in your home stereo system. If you got a lot of speakers, it's just, or even a couple big ones that just, they're going to shoot the frequencies right into you.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Do you use this often? Do you do it
I
every
just used
day?
it today. I was using the
Okay.
pineal gland like 30 minutes ago, and that one stimulates your pineal gland. And that's one of my favorite ones to do.
So these bone conduction headphones, I mean, I listen to them I take phone calls on them. I
Hmm.
listen to music and I listen to frequencies. Does this particular app, is it almost a vibration? Is it a sound, or is it both?
It does frequencies, so there's lots of different frequencies that are done for different things. But yeah, it's sending a frequency, but you do hear the sound because it's projected as sound. But
Okay.
yeah, it's various different frequencies.
Okay. Wow. Can I take you to a different
Sure.
segue now? Okay.
Hmm.
So you also mentioned copper, which
Hmm.
interestingly, there's a copper based question. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you
Okay,
about
interesting.
what, yeah. You're probably, I mean, it came from you. I
Oh,
promise.
okay.
So you were talking about, I don't know this second word, but RH negative. You'd
Yeah.
mentioned RH negative, which you said is copper based. I don't know anything about what that means. So
Hmm.
you can tell us all about it.
Hmm.
And you mentioned something called ROGAM, RHOGAM, and then autism. And you mentioned a connection with
Hmm.
those three. Do you recall what you'd shared with us, or you want me to share a little bit more about what?
Yeah, refresh me a little bit because I've been all over the place the past few weeks.
All good. So you'd said, thankfully, autism can be reversed by chelating metals, CHELATI, chelating metals, feeding the brain
Hmm.
lion's mane, and removing Wi-Fi devices. Now, you'd mentioned a link in this, but in it you
Oh,
said,
actually, yeah, I shared the link that talked about that. Right. Hmm.
yeah. Now, you might not know this to the nth degree, but I'd love to hear about
Hmm.
it. What did you mean by that? At least just broad brushstrokes.
Yeah, so I'll just give the executive overview, the easy stuff. So what a lot of these things kind of flow with the food poisons and pesticides and just, you know, minerals and things that we're not supposed to be having. But
Yeah.
um, copper is one thing that they used to drink out of copper cups as a health thing. Um, Copper as well, if you put copper rods next to plants, like they're pulling from the
In the
ether, they're
soil.
pulling the energy. Yeah, they'll pull the copper will pull the energy, the frequencies, bring it down into the soil, and then it will feed the plants and they grow more rapidly. Um, and then there's ways to detoxify and get a lot of these minerals essentially damage to the brain because of all these minerals. And there's many ways to do it.
Right.
One thing I started doing recently, Put baking soda in my coffee, which kind of counters the acidity of the coffee, and it has some other health benefits. I do a
Yeah.
lot of little things all over the place. So because I've researched each one and moved on, and I wasn't really looking at, well, I'm going to research this and I'm going to talk about it forever. It's like I move on. Okay, I know this is good. I'm going to do it. Go on,
Right.
find the next thing, and just like I said, it's continuous improvement, and all these things help raise your vibrational frequencies.
I think that is a great point when you're mentioning about I've learned something, I use it, I take it for what it is, but you don't get so hyper focused on it, which I think we all can do. You know, if you find something that really resonates, we all
Mhm.
tend to get, I think, overexcited. I certainly do. You can see that,
Yeah.
especially on X. And I think learning that when you look at something, you read something, you feel it, you get chills or you get emotional, that's wonderful. But there's a point in time, I think, intuitively, you know when it's time to move on. And it doesn't mean you've run through it and you're like, okay, that's not what I thought it was. It's not that. It's building you to something different.
Mhm.
You've found one source of content or one person or one whatever. You've loved what that experience was. And I feel that intuitively you know when it's time to move on. And if you don't quite get that first signal, you're going to get more. Does that make sense? Do you think
Yeah,
that's
it
true?
does, and it kind of goes with the way I do things because I try to cross reference and not just go to one source, but I'll dive in real hard for a day or two or a week
Yeah.
on something. Try to make sure I'm comfortable that this isn't going to cause damage,
Right.
because we've all seen the snake oil salesmen that are like, oh, this is going to be great, buy this, do that. And
Yeah.
then also I'm leery of people that push, hey, come and buy this product here. Like,
Right.
I view that everything that is natural, not everything, I mean, there's some things that are natural you don't want to ingest, but there are a lot of things that are here already that were meant for us, that
Right.
humanity used to use, and then we got into agriculture and industrialization, and then things really got messed up, and now we don't know what the hell we're eating and what we're
Yeah.
putting in our bodies, what we're exposed to. I mean, hell, just like sunscreen causes cancer. This has been coming out now for the past year or so,
Yeah.
and I've been anti sunscreen for a very long time, and I've been telling people, and now, like, one of my sister-in-laws stopped using sunscreen. She came to her own conclusion that sunscreen is not good for her, and she stopped doing it.
Yeah.
So I feel that if it's starting from a point of nature and you can source it in the most clean way, then and I've seen that, okay, there's a lot of evidence that it works, then I will do it, make it part of my routine, and move on and see what else is there that can help raise my vibration, get healthier.
Yeah.
You know, we need to unlock our powers that we all have that we don't know that we have, and doing all these things, getting closer to nature helps.
You, it's almost as if you saw my questions either just internally or not, because if you didn't mention scam, you tiptoed around the word, um, because we've all fallen for things. And
Yep.
even on that post that I was reading, to you, um, you had someone who's a mutual friend of ours, at least on X. I've
Yeah.
never talked with her, directly, but she just said, "Damn it, I fell for that scam." Do you remember what your response was to that? I'll tell you it, so you don't need to look back through it.
Vaguely, but I could say that my response would be, "Hey, don't worry about it. We've been fooled often. We all fall for things. You need to just learn from it
Yep.
and help others to avoid. And now you'll be able to see them better. You know."
Yep. We have all fallen for things.
Mhm.
Maybe it is our nature to trust, which is correct. May
Yeah, and
want
that's
to
not
take
a bad
advantage.
way to be.
What's that?
It's not a bad way to be trusting.
It's not. No, it's not. And you went on to say many want to take advantage and did. Anything that's good, because we have free will and choice, we have agency. There
Right.
are going to be some with, this is no judgment attached when I say this, that are going to think, how can I take advantage of this for whatever reason? Not
Mhm.
necessarily with bad intentions to hurt people, but you went on to say, don't feel bad about it. Just learn and move on. Let go.
Right.
We all get smarter as time goes on. So
Mhm.
for me, um, you were saying, look, yes, we could look back and kind of hold on to that thing that, why didn't I know this a second earlier or a month earlier? Or we can celebrate and just declare, I'm happy that I know this now. This forward is going to help me. all about higher vibrations. So
Yeah, and it's it's like letting go, right? Let go of that mistake you made, or let go of that person that scammed you,
yeah,
and then just start. It even ties into living. Okay, now live your life in a different manner that of what you've learned with that one scam, because if it can harden your heart, which then you can't
yeah,
love, you
yeah,
can't have that compassion and kindness for other people. You don't want to trust anybody, and that's really the worst thing that can happen to you. Like, you can trust and verify, right?
yeah.
And if we all start from a place where we're going to trust, you can still verify what's going on. It doesn't mean that you don't trust. It's that you trust them, but you want to just verify for yourself that this is going to be applicable to you. Because we are a little bit different, and some people like the taste of this, don't like the taste of that. They don't want to do this because it's not in their nature. Like, there's so many ways that you can all get to that same place,
Yeah.
like I mentioned earlier. But don't let anything harden your heart. Don't stop trusting. Just discern better. You'll learn, and
Yeah.
forgive yourself for. Don't feel like, oh, I was stupid. No, I mean, trusting someone is a great honor. Like I
Right.
trust you, right? And um, like that's. I just feel like that's where we need to be. There's so many people that
I
don't trust anything, that are angry
yeah.
all the time, and that's not healthy.
I agree. It is not, and forgiveness is huge. And I trust you. I appreciate that you trust me. I would say maybe I've never told it to you this way before, and I'd love everyone to hear this. That trust that you have in me is, in my opinion, something I should. This is just for me. This isn't saying it to anyone else or to yourself, but I want to re-earn that trust every time you and I interact. Every text message, every interaction on X.
Mhm.
I want to work towards earning that trust from you to me. And I think that is a way possibly for someone to say, well, I forgave that person, but I can't ever trust them again. That's okay. If that's what you feel, that's great. Over time, you can see how their behavior, over time, George, you can see my behavior and and discern for yourself, make your own decision. Do I still trust Gone the way that I did? And I don't know if that's kind of how you approach it, but it's my way of looking at things. Can you?
Yeah, for me, when it comes to you anyway, it's more of trusting in divinity and
Okay.
spirituality, trusting in
Yeah.
source, prime creator, God. um, I we're linked. We've had so many synchronicities. We've thought
Yeah.
of different things. Even in this conversation, I'm finding that what I'm saying is leading to your next question, which is pretty crazy. But
Right.
um, it's it's just the operating system of the universe. This is just how it works, right? So in a way, I'm trusting in you and a higher thing, which we all are that thing anyway.
Right.
Which is why I feel we should all trust. If we are all pieces of God experiencing this life here, then why wouldn't I trust you? And
Right.
there's people that just don't realize that concept, and they may be doing bad things. And even there, I mean, you can look at all of us as children. A little kid does something wrong, and do you hate that little kid? No, you teach them, hey, this is how it
Right.
should be different. But we feel that just because we're 30 or 40 or 50,
Yeah.
that we're still not children. But cosmically and in the time span of all of creation, we are babies, in a way. It just depends how you look at it, right? It's all
Right.
from a certain point of view.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. This brings me to a conversation, just summarily over the weekend, and she's quite a bit older even than 30s and 40s and 50s. She says such, so I'll share it here.
Mhm.
And the trust that I had in her, and I'm actually now changing my mind right here, real time, when you mentioned that. Maybe I for myself need to revisit about that earning of trust. Maybe that's a little too hard headed, even for me to consider, because in the span of a short amount of time, there was trust between the two of us, and I think as much because she trusted me, maybe blindly, if you will, and me as well. And that the start of that conversation and the ending, at least currently, was unimaginably different than I would have expected because of that trust. That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's powerful.
yeah, it is. Everything starts from trust if you really think about it, because you're walking down the street and there's someone there, are you going to think that they might want to harm you? Are you going to think that they're just going about their way? I mean, they're a person like you. They're walking down the street too. What do you think
Right.
they're thinking about you? And you're projecting this out. So if
Yeah.
you're projecting out fear, and that person is going to catch it and feel it, and they're going to be afraid of you too. So it's like what you put out, you do get back in return, and you should start from a place of trust.
That's right. So you mentioned about getting back in return, and you're probably not shocked anymore that that kind of leads into the next question. Um, you'd mentioned again, it was on X. You were talking about, and I think this is your quote, so I'll read it to you. See if you can remember it. A lady asks, "How much do you sell your eggs for?" Do you remember
A
this
little bit, yeah,
conversation?
yeah. That's
Yeah.
the one where it
So
deals with the rich businesses or the local seller.
exactly, yeah. You'd gone on to mention about an old vendor said something like 50 cents an egg, ma'am, and the lady says, "I'll take 6 eggs for 250, or I'm leaving."
Hmm.
Can't do math well, but I think that's right in the same.
Yeah.
And um, that older salesman said, "Buy it at whatever price you want to. I haven't sold a single egg today, and I need this to live." You went on a little bit later to mention about when you are buying goods and services, I guess I'll call it, whether it's from a box store business, no judgment there, or if it's a
Hmm.
local vendor, which is what I would choose personally if
Sure.
I can, when I can. I don't
Right.
always. Um, you tend to kind of, if I may, set your own price. Is that true? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, because this is coming to mind, and I'm trying to remember where we were. Um, we went to a foreign country. It may have been Costa Rica or somewhere else.
Okay.
Oh no, no, it was in. I think it was in France. But there was this lady that was from a neighboring country. I don't remember where, but she had handmade wool. I think it was wool sweaters or something.
Okay.
And I don't remember what the price was, but let's just say it was, I don't know, $60, whatever, which is already cheap to me.
Right.
Um, and my wife wanted it, and she was like, "I don't know, it's a bit much." And I was like, "No, um, I would sooner drop 60, 70, $80 to this person right here selling their handmade things than going to a store and buying one for $50 or
Yeah.
$40, because these people, like, this is their livelihood, this is what they're doing, and all these
Right.
large corporations are making all this money and doing all these things, and it's like, we just even give a little extra. So we may have paid 70, $75 or whatever, and they were just, it meant the world to them, and it didn't cost us anything really. It wasn't going to make a difference that we paid 75 for it. And it's just a different mentality I have, and I think part of it comes from because my parents, they would take us to Mexico when we were little kids. We lived in Houston, and we drove from Houston. My dad drove from Houston all the way down to Mexico City. So that's a very neat drive once you get out of the flat areas of Texas and start getting into Mexico. And it was much safer back then. Yeah, there was still corruption with police and all these other things, but I saw a lot on those drives. I saw a lot of
Yeah.
poor people, kids coming up and selling gum, and my dad just buying all the gum and all this, and giving them extra, or just not even taking the
Right.
gum and just giving them money. And
Right.
this is where I learned. Um, it's not charity, but it's, I forgot what it's called, but where you're respecting them, you're giving them. There was a quote I had just read. Did you see this where they said it's not charity, but it's something through respect, through their profession. So if someone's selling you something, pay them maybe a little bit more, almost like it's a tip or something. And because you're not just giving them money, you're
Yeah.
buying something, and it's like, oh, you really appreciate this thing. You're giving them a
Right.
little bit extra. Say, no, you're not charging enough. Here, this is what
Right.
you should charge. I value it at this much. I'm going to buy it for that much more. That is infinitely stronger and more powerful than just like giving them the $60 and not even taking anything, because people don't want charity. They want to be valued.
Right.
And if you buy something and you're like, no, this is too cheap, I'm going to give you a little bit more, because something like this would be $150 somewhere else, or
Well,
whatever, or $80 or 90. And it's like that's how you respect people, and you let them know that you really value their artwork, their labor,
Right.
their creativity. And that's infinitely more powerful than going to a store and buying something for $10 cheaper,
Right.
that's mass manufactured, that doesn't have that high vibration that they put in with their creativity.
Yeah. They're they're not wanting a handout or a
Right.
donation, which might have a negative connotation. They want to be able to give something in return. I might go as far to say they're happy and appreciate what you're doing. They want to give back to you as well.
Hmm.
Um,
And
I
sometimes
even
they
think,
throw in a little extra thing too, and
right,
that's fine. And
right.
I'll be like, no, I want to buy that too. So,
I think of this, and I have nothing to back this up. It's just my feeling. If you give that to little kids, some little kids, they're new in this physical life. So they might be like, great, you've given me this money and I didn't have to give away whatever I was selling. Now I can go turn it around. And some may think that, and that's okay. There's not a judgment there, my opinion. Others might say, wow, that was a really, like, that might stick with them. You might never know about it after the
yeah.
fact, but that might stick with them for the next potential customer or just something in their life. We never know all these kind of sparks of light that are shared. So that's
You
kind of
took
what
the words
I'm.
out of my mouth. I was going to say it's leaving little bits of light all over the place where you go to make the
Yeah,
world brighter. you know?
there you go. There you
Yeah.
go.
I
Right
mean, if
on.
we all do that, where can darkness reside? Really.
Right. What good is a light if you douse it and you put it in a corner somewhere and you only shine it on your own, body or for yourself? What good is that light? I mean,
Hmm.
you should share that. And I
Yeah.
know that's hard for some people. Forgiveness, I think, happens with that. Judgment happens with that. Whatever's happened in your life. You and I probably had a similar upbringing in that I didn't feel like there was a lot of trauma in it. Maybe self-imposed. I certainly placed some in my own way, but that was from my free will and choice. And I
Right.
didn't know that then, and I know it now. So yeah, share your light, everyone, however that feels to you in that moment.
Yeah. For people that may be watching this that aren't into, I don't know what you'd want to call it. Like they think it's hocus pocus or they think it's, magic or whatever.
Right.
Think about it this way. If you're out in the dark and you have a flashlight, you're beaming the light over there to see what that is. So that's essentially you giving those little bits of light, right? But what happens? It reflects back into your eyes, so now you can see that thing.
Yeah.
So all the light that you put out, it comes back, and it's like the
Right.
more light you put out, it reflects back, and that's one way for the more sciencey people to think about it. That,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's how it works with light. So why wouldn't it work if I'm going and throwing these good acts out? It all comes back to you, maybe not from that person, but just like I said, the operating system of the universe connects everything. It's all the underlying structure, and
Yeah.
you may drop bits of light here, and those bits go to other things and other places, and then eventually, I mean, it all, because we're connected, it comes back to you.
It
It really
does.
does.
Yes, it does. I'm going to ask a different question now, or take us in a different track. And this one could be controversial for some people that hear. So
Mhm.
I'm going to say that ahead of time.
Okay.
But I think that I think it matters. And the first episode when I talked with Seti Matua, we talked a little bit about this of sort of my approach and his, and how it could seem on the surface very different. And people listening to this, you and I, may be different in this, but your personal views, George, on spirituality and religion. You'll notice I said and religion, not versus, because I don't view them as opposing things unless we make them opposing.
Hmm.
Um, in the spirit of this conversation and higher vibrations, how do you personally, or what you've seen, try and build bridges to those potentially opposing, but really, I think, similar views? How do you do that for you?
Um, yeah, I've kind of been in both worlds, so
Okay.
I will say that you first thing is you never start off by attacking what they believe in, right? What you have to
Yeah.
do is find the common themes, so to speak, because the common themes will go across everything. Like I said earlier, it'll go across religion, science. It just all connects. Um, I would start by asking them, what is it? What is your biggest question that you have? in this
Yeah.
reality, in this plane, in this existence, like, and then try to find a way to tie into the things that you and I have learned and that we're still
Right.
learning. I mean, we don't know everything, and you know, I feel like the more I learn, it's like, oh, I didn't know anything yesterday. You know, like I
Right.
may know 100 things yesterday, and then today I learned 50 more, and then by
Yeah.
the end of the month, I'm at 1,000 things, right? So
Right.
I can always look back and say, man, I didn't know anything back then, right? Even though I knew something, but so it's just you have to find the common ground, and really that always starts by listening.
Yeah.
So saying, hey, what are your thoughts? What are the things that trouble you, or the questions you have, the big questions that you can't answer, and let's just talk about that, and let's see what common ground we have, what we can figure out, what's true for what you've learned, what's true for what I've learned. I also view religion as an app on top of the operating system. So
Okay.
there's science as an app. There's you know going to college as an app. There's religion, like all these places where we learn things that may or may not be true, but um, they're
Yeah.
all necessary for our path.
Your, if I can play this back to you,
Mm-hmm.
this is just what I visualized. I'm going to put my hand, there's an app sitting
Mm-hmm.
on top of that operating system. It's
Mm-hmm.
sitting on top of the source code.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one type of app, like your frequency app.
Yeah.
Whether it's religion or the mountains app, meaning, and that's where my mind goes to be spiritual, in the mountains. That's where I find it. So
Yeah.
there's different apps that can give you access to
Mm-hmm.
this source code, to this operating system. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Because if you think about it, like there's a lot of apps that you could have on your phone that maybe are worthless, right? Or maybe they're
Right.
junk. Just like there's foods that are junk, right? And maybe indulge in it, once in a while, or some
Right.
people every day, and that's why you may have problems. But um, so not every app is good, and
Right.
some apps have some good and some bad. So you really have to look at everything that way. Um, you know, there's various religions, and they all have some bits of truth in them and some bits of false, right?
Right.
Um, you have to be able to discern what is good, and even like maybe there's something that you used to do that served your purpose at that time, or it was good for your growth, but now it
Yeah.
no longer serves a purpose. Like for me, that was going to church never really served a purpose, and then I was a minister for a while, and that served a purpose for sure.
Right.
But it's not something I ever need to do again. I'm
Right.
doing something different now.
Yeah. And there's some, like, again, my friend Seti that I talked to on the last episode, he's still very active in his church, and
Mm-hmm.
he was a bishop for a period of time. I think that he still is. He's changed from what assignment, if you will, he was doing then. And he's doing something different, and I think that's going to be a lifelong thing. But he's also, his ancestry is from Samoa, and
Mm-hmm.
until the arrival of Christianity there in general,
Yeah.
they had more of a spiritual outlook and connected to the earth and things like that. And those things resonate still with him.
Mm-hmm.
He just chooses, again, free will and agency,
Sure.
to access it through a church, and that's how he finds it. So
Right.
that's very cool. So I can see both ways. You were at church and you decided that things are different,
Mm-hmm.
or you weren't at church before and you've decided that is whatever it is, whatever
Yeah.
app it is, for whatever period of time you want to use. That's great.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, well done. Did you want to add anything more to that? Anything else that came to mind?
No, not
Okay.
really.
So last question. Um, just thinking in general, things that are simple, cost you nothing. You actually even mentioned this, I think, on our last X Space.
Mm-hmm.
What are the top 3 ways that you think anyone listening to this, me, you, someone down the street, what are the top 3 things that you think could collectively raise our own vibrations and help others do the same? Just top 3, first thing out of your heart. What are the top 3?
So the very first one, to me is would be food. And I'll go into a little detail about that. Is
Yeah.
firstly, try to eat more things that are naturally growing. So if you go grocery shopping, avoid as much as possible the center aisles and just shop around the outside, the fresh
Yeah.
things.
Yep.
Um, always try to get just the freshest, best things, because that is what you're feeding into your body. This is how your body runs. If you put in good things, you'll get good things out. That for me is one of the main things that everyone can do. Um, is just focus on eating cleaner, less of the bad stuff, and that starts getting you to higher vibration as well.
Right.
Um,
Physically, you mean physically higher?
Physically, yeah.
Yeah.
And spiritually, it helps you too because it's removing a lot of the blockers that keep you from vibrating higher that help open your heart and mind and
Yeah.
all of that. So I feel that that's very crucial as a first step. When people talk about exercising, oh, I got to lose this, they say weight. It's not really weight. You're trying to lose fat. You're trying to get fitter,
Right.
stronger. Um, and everyone thinks, oh, I need to go to the gym. That's why you see so many people start their New Year's resolutions, go to the gym, and they peter out after a month
Right.
because really you're going to make much more progress with food than you are with exercising. You don't have to exercise
Right.
at all. You change
Right.
the food, that changes everything. So that's the number one thing that I will always bring up.
All right. So food.
Um,
Got it.
yeah. Number two is probably going to be get out in nature because so many people live in cities. They don't have backyards or they're in apartments. You're in an office all day long. You're in your car. I mean, and then the other hours you're asleep. So how many hours are you really out in nature? And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I enjoy the most is that I'm not working. I can be out in nature as much as I want. If I start feeling sluggish or whatever, and I haven't been out in a while, that's on me, right? So
Yeah.
I would say get out in nature, walk on the grass barefoot, be out in the sun, maybe 30 minutes or an hour, no sunscreen again.
Right.
um, be out in nature, get close to nature, hear the
Yeah.
birds. Um, that is huge too. I think that is really big to be able to open up.
You mentioned as far as someone who might say or might think, well, that sounds great. If I had the ability to go to the mountains, or if I had the ability to touch grass, maybe let's say they're in a city
Mm-hmm.
and they can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, just as a small first step for nature? What do you think that would be?
At least get outside, be in the
Yeah.
sun. I've been in so many big cities, and there's always trees and something somewhere.
Right.
So, and don't be afraid of what people think of you. Hug the tree. The tree's connected to the ground. The tree is connected to the ground, and
Right.
I saw this one guy, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And he said, if you want to get strong, and he was built, um, and he was wearing like just a pair of shorts, no shirt, nothing, and he was like up hanging onto the tree, hugging it with all limbs. He
Wow.
says, just do this and hold on as long as you can. And if
With
you do
like
that,
all hands and feet, like
yeah,
everything.
yeah. And I tried it, and it was very hard. I can only do it for like a second. I haven't tried
Yeah.
it again, and I need to get out there and do it. But you can start by just holding the tree
Right.
tight and maybe lift one leg up and slowly build up the strength. But
Right.
the trees are grounded. They're connected to all
Right.
the energies, to
They are.
the mycelium, the mushrooms, everything underground. It's all a network. Everything's connected. So, yeah, I mean, you can get to a tree, and don't worry about looking silly. Take your shoes off, step on the grass where the tree is, whatever.
Right.
But get in the sun. Yeah, I mean, you can do this. I'm sure most people have access to that,
I,
no matter where you live.
well, I'm sure too. And you bring up about don't worry about looking silly. There's so much brain. I'll call it brain chatter. Other people that might even see you doing this, if they even notice you, which might not be true because they're in their phone or they're looking at whatever else, regardless of what they might think, it's going to be a small amount of time. It really does not matter. Just like you started this off with, just be yourself, or in your 3 L's, that motto. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's the second one. So
yeah.
it's food, get out in nature in whatever capacity that can be. And what's your third?
So the third one is I feel we all need strength. So before we were in our cars and in our comfy homes and in office buildings, we were
Yeah.
out in nature doing things. So we had some kind of physicality to us. I would say probably most people were strong. They
Yeah.
had some physical strength, men and women. So one thing that I've learned and through my own experience is you can't get strong just by doing stretches. You don't need fancy equipment, which people are always buying equipment and then don't use it and garage
Right.
sale it and go to the gym. Like none of that matters. Do some simple stretches. Find
Yeah.
some stretches that work for you. It could be so. I tend to do more of a few yoga poses that work for me because of my back. So
Right.
trying to strengthen my back. So child's pose, super simple, easy. Anyone can do it. It stretches out your back. It stretches out your core. You can do downward facing dog. You can do cat cow. All of those help with your core. And even if you just did those four, do each one twice for like as long as you can hold each pose,
Yeah.
you start getting stronger. Like as I was doing this, it was crazy. It was trippy. Like I was noticing I was getting stronger. And I'm like, I'm not doing anything. But it does. You do feel it, and you do get stronger. And then you can do them longer, and then you can add other stretches. So I think those three things are very important. The
Yeah.
food you take in, being out in nature, and then stretching to
Strength.
strengthen your body.
Yeah.
That all brings you closer, I believe, to God, to Source, everything.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I actually I didn't expect where you're going to go with that. When you said food, it didn't right away jump.
Mm-hmm.
And, talking about nature, that did. And even when you said strength, I'm thinking strength. So those are awesome. Those are awesome.
Thank you.
I've gone out of my questions. Do you have
Yeah.
anything else that you want to talk through?
I don't know. Is there something that you feel we should hit for everybody?
I'm
Maybe
glad that
something
we
that
did
we
the
talked about
introduction
earlier, but a little
here.
more in depth.
Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe something we already talked about, or something we haven't, but that might be valuable to people.
Yeah, I'll just mention here to the group. Even though you and I did an introduction here, I am really interested in hearing from people. And even if you don't watch the entire thing, I know not everyone is into like long form, shows like this. Totally get it. Couple seconds of a video or people talking is what more matters. So my, ask to anyone who hears this, George and I are, real live, regular, normal people.
Mm-hmm.
We'd love to hear from you. Reach out to either of us. Topics that you'd like to see, things that maybe we've never heard of. I'm sure we'll learn about. I mean that even on. I keep going back to the one on Thursday. We're doing another show tomorrow. That's really kind of like alternative healing modalities and things like that. She'll be able to explain that much more, but that's kind of the general sense. And then frequencies and technology of a personal experience for a person, not about really any product. It's really about her personal experience and how she interprets that. And we'll then talk a little bit about some of that. And then next week is going to be someone who who is going to talk about kind of her inspiration and sort of what she's doing with music. And she's released a couple albums that are gospel music. And so I just wanted to mention that here because of all the different episodes. I imagine that there'll be some people who will watch this channel that are going to watch a couple of the shows, and others they'll see the title or like click in for a little bit and say, this sort of isn't me. I really want to just extend my appreciation to all of you for asking questions, giving feedback. If things resonate for you, great, run with it. If they don't, that's great too. I mean, I get to just learn about you, George, and the other people that join the show together with us. And I think that's amazing. I hope this serves as helpful and inspirational to anyone who watches it, even for just 9 seconds.
Yeah. And I'd like to add, often people, and this is weird to me, I don't understand it, but on the internet, they'd be like, oh, I want to steal that. Or is it okay if I share that? And I'm like, yeah, it's the internet. It's like the Wild West, just, share it everywhere.
Right.
And even, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, but I'll tell people, look, if there was a section of this video that resonated with you and you want to share it and you think it was valuable,
right.
Yeah, make a little clip of it and then share it wherever you want. Like, this is, if nobody sees this, then does it really matter?
Right.
Like,
you're not shining your light
anymore. In a way, because we're sending the energy out, but this isn't about me and you. This is about all of you out there. What you want to learn, what you want to share, what makes sense, what doesn't, and maybe just 10% of what we talked about today resonated with you, and you feel, oh, I know a lot of people would like this. Yeah, cut it up, share it, whatever. I mean, this is for all of you. It's not for us.
That's right.
We're only doing this because we've been called to do this. We feel it in our hearts. It's time for us to put ourselves out there. We've done enough study and research, and we're going to continue to do that. But we have a lot of material that we can talk about, and we may half know it, or fully know it.
Right.
But regardless, that's how we got here. I mean, we got
Right.
here by watching others and reading others' books and online content, and putting together the puzzles. And it's funny because I'll see a lot of creators that they're on a little sliver of some piece of knowledge of the whole universe
Right.
or whatever, right? And I'll see them talk about this, and then this other person talks about this other thing, and they may not realize the other exists. And hey, y'all have some things that really connect. Y'all should meet
Right.
and talk and further develop it. So view us as the bridge of connecting all these maybe weird and wacky things that you don't know exist,
Right.
and then you can build a bridge to other places, to other people. I like to connect people together, and I've done that on X. Like there was one guy talking about something, I don't remember what, and it matched with what somebody else was
And you
in
put
a
them
different
together.
way. It was two totally different subjects, but there's a connection there. And I'm like, hey,
There is.
I would tag people, hey, you need to look at this, you need to look at that. And some have connected, some haven't, but I'll keep
Right.
doing that all day. I don't care. Like you don't have to do it.
That's right.
I'll keep connecting people and say, hey, you might want to look at this because it's kind of in your wheelhouse, even though you may not realize it.
Well, your intention of doing that and your effort in it matters more, I think, than what that end result may be. The end result may be wonderful. The end result may be, well, they didn't talk, but your intent and effort, and if everyone does that, it really does. I'll say it changes the world. I know
Well,
that's
and then
probably
some
an eye
people
roll
will
moment.
see it. Other people may see it and be like, oh, they're not talking, but I see the connection, and I'm going to
Right.
start looking down that rabbit hole.
Exactly. Exactly.
A lot of these rabbit holes connect, and
They
people don't
do.
realize how they connect.
Well, it goes back to there's apps on the top, and then there's the source underneath. However you get there, you get there.
Right.
If we can approach it from one source, God, source field, divine creator, I'm going to try to use all those terms because I want to respect everyone's different viewpoints on it.
Right.
It's not opposing views, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah, and science and I guess religion, for lack of a better word, or spirituality,
Yeah.
they're more connected than anyone knows
Yeah.
or realizes, and they want to
Yeah.
feel like, no, this is, you can't put your chocolate in my peanut butter. And I'm like, no, it goes great together, and you don't understand how great it is and how
Right.
mind-blowing it is. And if you would just try it and stop fighting it, you would love
Yeah.
it.
That's right. That's right. Hey, let's conclude that there. Hang
Okay.
on for a little bit, George.
Sure.
I
I will.
appreciate you.
Yeah, I
And
appreciate
everyone,
you, brother.
thank you. What's that?
I said, I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you too. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.